The first indication that something was wrong came as a slight tremor beneath our rover's chassis. A subtle vibration so faint that at first I thought it was just the shifting of Martian regolith beneath the treads. But the machines felt it, and when the machines feel something, command notices. In 2095, nothing on Mars goes unmeasured. Every quiver of dust, every misplaced grain of sand is logged, catalogued, and fed into the predictive models that keep us alive on a world that never wanted us here. I was leading the survey that morning, though Mars time makes morning a suggestion at best. My name is Commander Elias Wren, mission lead for ESA-NASA Joint Survey Team Theta 9. We were tasked with deep subsurface scans of the Tharsis plateau, a region we'd mapped 100 times before. But funding boards and scientific committees love redundancy. Safety, they say. Verification. The comforting illusion of control. By 2095, we had mapped nearly every cubic meter of Martian crust within reach of human equipment. Nothing shocking remained. Nothing new. Mars was a dead planet, and dead planets keep their secrets buried under layers of silence. At least, that's what we believed. Then the signal appeared. The tremor registered again, this time accompanied by a piercing spike on our low-frequency seismographs. A shape emerged on the readouts, angular, metallic, and impossibly smooth. A mass at least 170 meters long, locked beneath nearly 19 meters of stone and dust. At first, Mission Control assumed it was another geological anomaly. A collapsed lava tube, a basaltic intrusion, something mundane. But metallic density readings don't lie, and within an hour the chatter in the comms room turned tight, clipped, clinical. That tone only appears when someone realizes the universe has just rewritten a law or two. Elias, Dr. Maren Holt whispered from the secondary console, her voice barely audible above the hum of telemetry. The reflection index. This thing isn't natural. It's structured. I leaned over her shoulder, scanning the data stream. The surface geometry was unmistakable. Uniform edges, curvature too precise to be geological, composition too refined to be meteorite debris. In 30 years of planetary survey work, I'd never seen anything like it. "Notify Houston," I said. "They're already listening," she replied. They were. They always were. 2 hours later, our excavation drones arrived. Titan-class burrowers, machines designed to carve through stone like water through sand. By then, the entire outpost knew. Rumors always travel faster than official briefings. By the time the first trench was carved out of the red earth, every scientist on base had at least one theory, each stranger and more far-fetched than the last. But none of us guessed the truth. The first exposed section of hull gleamed beneath our floodlights, perfectly smooth, entirely unblemished. No oxidation, no pitting, no erosion. The metal curved like a single seamless shell, as if it had been grown rather than built. "Alien," someone whispered. It was the obvious conclusion, the unavoidable one. Mars had teased the possibility for centuries: canals, microfossils, anomalous methane plumes, shadows mistaken for structures. But this was not a Martian artifact. This was a craft, a vessel, a monument to engineering centuries beyond anything humanity had ever achieved. Or so we thought then. The moment the dust settled, our scanners detected something else. A faint energy field clinging to the hull like frost. Not radioactive, not thermal, not electromagnetic. Something other. A distortion that made static ripple across our visor feeds whenever we stepped too close. After 6 hours of controlled excavation, the first markings on the hull became visible. Lines etched into the metal, impossibly precise. We assumed they were alien glyphs at first, until our linguistics specialist recognized the structure. Letters, not alien, human. Maren reached out slowly, her gloved fingertips grazing the engraved surface. "This can't be," she murmured. "The character spacing, it's English." I felt the air in my suit grow thin, as if the world itself had paused to breathe in. "Read it," I said quietly. She swallowed. "Sovereign Dawn, Earth Orbital Launch, 2183. My voice didn't come immediately. When it did, it sounded distant. 2183? That's almost a century in the future. The team went silent. Even the machines seemed to quiet themselves, their mechanical whirs fading beneath a wave of disbelief. We stepped back in unison, each of us processing the same impossible realization. This vessel wasn't an alien relic. It wasn't ancient. It wasn't even contemporary. It was from humanity's future, and it was buried beneath nearly 2 decades of Martian sediment. Which meant only one thing. Whatever this ship was, wherever it came from, and however it ended up here, it had been here for far longer than it logically could have been. The first breach occurred just after mission nightfall. One of the drones, misaligned by a minor calculation drift, struck a structural seam. The impact was gentle, barely a tap, yet the hull responded. A ripple spread across the surface like a shiver moving through living skin. Then the seam opened. Not broken, not damaged. Opened. A soft glow spilled out. Pale. Cold. Flickering like distant lightning trapped beneath water. Our helmets bathed in the reflection. And inside the glow, shapes formed. Contours that suggested corridors, chambers, conduits. A ship waiting to be boarded. A ship that had somehow arrived before it was ever built. A ship that held the answers to a future we had not yet lived, and perhaps should never live. "Commander," Maren whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "Something's moving inside." I turned toward the breach, heart pounding. The glow pulsed once, then again. Not mechanical, not random. A pulse like a heartbeat, and something inside the ship began to wake. The breach widened as our drones pulled back, their floodlights cutting through the swirling dust and illuminating the impossible architecture within. The interior didn't resemble any spacecraft humanity had ever built. No segmented plating, no visible rivets, no modular panels. The walls flowed seamlessly into one another, the material almost organic in the way it curved, merging floor to ceiling in a continuous loop of metallic symmetry. Dr. Maren Holt stepped forward, visor reflecting the pale luminescence drifting from within. "Elias," she said quietly, "this isn't just advanced engineering. This looks grown." The idea lingered between us like a toxic fume. Our onboard AI, Kestrel, chimed through the comm line with a calmness that made my skin crawl. Preliminary analysis suggests the hull composition contains trace amounts of carbon lattice structures consistent with synthetic biocomposites. This vessel may incorporate biological components. Maren shivered. A living ship. I'd heard that phrase in science fiction when I was a kid. Never once had I imagined I might stand in front of one. The opening pulsed faintly again. A quiet contraction then release, as if breathing. But every reading insisted it was dormant. No thermal signatures, no electromagnetic emissions, no internal movement. The heartbeat had been anomalous, Kestrel insisted. A pressure equalization response triggered by exposure to Martian air. A lie, or a misinterpretation. We didn't know enough to tell the difference. I turned to the team. "Prepare for entry. Standard EVA procedure. No one separates. No one engages foreign tech without my authorization." No one argued. They were too focused on the threshold ahead. An aperture into a future that had somehow rooted itself beneath ancient Martian stone. As we stepped through the opening, the sensation was immediate. Silence. Real silence. The kind one never experiences in a suit, where machinery hums constantly, where fans circulate oxygen and micromotors adjust pressure. But inside the craft, those background sounds felt smothered, dampened by some unseen force. Even our footfalls became ghostly things, felt, not heard. The corridor curved gently, its surface gleaming with a muted sheen. Embedded veins of faint luminescence snaked along the walls, providing just enough light to see while still leaving shadows in the corners of our vision. Lite Rafi Calderon, our systems specialist, ran a gloved hand across the wall. "No dust," he whispered. "No decay. If this thing's been here as long as the sediment layers suggest, it should be eroded, corroded, something." "It was sealed," Marin replied. "Maybe airtight. Or self-repairing," Rafi added. That possibility made my stomach knot. As we ventured deeper, the architecture changed subtly. The corridor straightened into a long cylindrical passage, its walls lined with what appeared to be translucent panels. Behind each panel floated strands of something delicate, suspended like filaments in gel. Marin knelt to examine one closely. "Organic threads," she murmured. "Like neural tissue, but patterned, structured." "Our ship with a nervous system," Rafi said. A soft chime sounded in my helmet. Kestrel again. "Commander, I am detecting low-frequency vibrations originating approximately 20 meters ahead. Rhythmic patterns." I felt a cold prickle along my spine. "Biological?" "Undetermined." The corridor emptied into a large chamber, oval, domed, its ceiling rising almost 15 meters above our heads. The floor was smooth, slightly concave, and in the center sat a raised platform shaped like a cocoon. Its surface was cracked open, and inside were the remnants of something that once resembled a seat or a cradle. Rafi approached it slowly. "Looks like a pilot interface of some kind." Marin leaned in. "A biostation, designed for direct neural linkage. No screens, no controls. Everything would be mental input-output." I frowned. Future humans flying ships with their minds. "That's not the strange part," she said softly. Her gloved finger traced a dark streak on the interior of the cradle. Not metal, not circuitry. Something biological, a residue. Dried. "Human cells," Kestrel confirmed. "Human. From the future." My breath hitched. "So someone piloted this here. Or fled here," Marin whispered. A soft, crackling sound echoed through the chamber, faint, brittle, like the distant settling of old wood. Except there was no wood here. We froze. Rafi's visor feed flickered for a moment, static pulsing across his HUD. "Visual interference," he muttered. "Something's scrambling." A new light flickered overhead. Not our lights. The ship's. Thin lines of illumination rippled across the ceiling in a pattern too deliberate to be random. A sequence, a response, as if our presence had triggered dormant systems. "Commander," Kestrel warned. "Environmental readings are fluctuating. Pressure variance detected. The vessel is adjusting internal conditions." "Is it sealing us in?" Rafi asked. "No," Kestrel replied. "It is accommodating. Accommodating." I wished the AI had chosen any other word. Marin glanced at me, her eyes wide behind the visor. "Elias, this ship was launched in 2183. That means its crew came from a future where humanity is still alive. Why send it back? Why bury it here?" I didn't answer. Because the answer was becoming clear, even then. This was not a mission of exploration. This was an escape. As we circled the chamber, Rafi's suit sensors beeped softly. "Commander, picking up something under the floor." "What kind of something?" He knelt, sweeping his scanner over the concave surface. "A compartment, large, locked, human biometric locks, but the parameters are degraded, like they were meant to be read by someone slightly different from us." Marin looked up sharply. "Slightly different how?" He swallowed. "Genetically." We exchanged glances. The same unspoken realization passed through all of us. Future humans didn't just leave Earth, they changed. And whatever they became, they brought it here with them. As Raffi prepared the unlock tools, a final ripple of light spread along the chamber walls. Then something beneath our feet shifted. A tremor, soft, intentional. And from the hidden compartment below came the faintest sound. Not mechanical, not digital. A slow, labored exhale. A breath. Something alive was waiting under the floor. The breath beneath the floor was faint, but unmistakably biological. Not the rasp of machinery or pressure vents. A human sound, but distorted, labored, as though drawn through lungs not built for this world, or any world we knew. For a heartbeat, none of us moved. The chamber felt smaller suddenly, the curved walls inching closer with every passing second. Raffi looked up at me, voice shaking. "Commander, permission to step back?" "Granted," I said immediately. "Everyone maintain distance. Do not touch the floor." Maren's gloved hand tightened around her scanner. "Elias," she murmured, "if something is alive down there, and this ship is from the future..." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. My mind filled in the horrors she'd left unsaid. What would future humans become to survive the journey this ship represented? What environments had they adapted to? What forced them to leave? And why choose Mars as the burial ground? The chamber lights flickered again, the lines of luminescence tracing new patterns. They weren't random, they were rhythmic. Pulses of soft blue flowing through the walls like signals moving through a blood vessel. The ship was communicating, but with what? Or with who? Kestrel's voice entered our helmets, this time with a rare hint of uncertainty. "Commander, the vibrational patterns correspond to cortical frequency ranges associated with human neural activity." Maren froze. "You're saying the ship is using brainwave-style signals?" "Correct, but the frequency is altered, higher amplitude, more synchronized, not human standard." "Meaning it's not communicating with us," I said quietly. "Correct, Commander. It is responding to a different cognitive signature." Raffi stepped backward until he nearly touched the chamber wall. "This feels wrong. We should retreat, seal the breach, report this. This isn't a derelict ship. It's some kind of containment crypt." "No," Maren whispered. "Not a crypt, a refuge." Her voice trembled, but her curiosity pushed her forward. She swept her scanner over the concave floor again, tracing the outline of the concealed hatch. The readings shifted abruptly, a spike of bioelectrical activity beneath the surface. "Elias," she said, "the organism below is weak, malnourished, but alive, and it has human DNA markers." A chill spread through me. "Markers," I repeated. "Not a match?" "Similar. Like a branch of our species that diverged from us. Not completely, but unmistakably changed." "Evolution in less than a century is impossible," Raffi said. "It is for natural evolution," Maren replied. "But forced adaptation, genetic re-engineering, catastrophic environmental pressure..." She trailed off. "Impossible things become real when survival demands them." Another breath rose from the compartment, this one slightly stronger, accompanied by a muffled scrape, like fingers trailing along metal from the inside. Something was trying to reach the surface, trying to open the hatch. And for the first time since entering the ship, every instinct I had screamed at me to run. "Kestrel," I said. "Analyze hatch integrity. Is it weakening?" "Negative. The compartment remains sealed. It will not open without external triggers." Raffi exhaled shakily. "Good. Then we..." A vibration coursed through the chamber, cutting him off, not from below, from behind us. The corridor we had entered through pulsed with sudden illumination, the walls shifting from blue to a deep, unsettling crimson. A warning color, a biological rejection. The ship didn't want us here anymore. "Commander," Kestrel said, "pressure thresholds are rising behind you. The structure is redirecting atmospheric flow." "What does that mean?" Raffi asked. "It is isolating the entry path." Marin's breath caught. "It's sealing us in." Before I could answer, the aperture we'd stepped through shivered. The once open seam contracted, folding inward like the iris of an eye. Panels flowed across the opening, merging seamlessly until nothing but a smooth wall remained. We were trapped. Raffi's voice cracked. "We have no exit, no exit. Elias..." "Calm down," I said, though my pulse hammered in my ears. "No one panics. Kestrel, can we force a breach?" "Negative. The internal walls have altered density. Cutting tools will not penetrate." "Can drones excavate from outside?" Marin asked. There was a pause. Too long. "Commander, I cannot contact the drones. The vessel is blocking outbound transmissions." Marin swallowed hard. "So it's not just sealing us in, it's isolating us from the world." A soft scraping sound echoed from below again, but this time accompanied by a low, tremulous tone. A vocalization. Weak, strained, as if someone far beneath us was trying to speak through ruined lungs. "Help!" The word was faint, distorted, human, but wrong. Far too resonant, vibrating at frequencies that barely belonged in a throat. Marin stepped closer instinctively, despite every warning sign around us. "Elias, it's speaking." "No," I said. "It's trying to mimic speech. Those aren't normal vocal cords." Raffi backed away, shaking. "That thing is not human. Not anymore." A sudden surge of light flared along the chamber walls. But this time, it didn't feel like communication. It felt like recognition, as if the ship had scanned us fully for the first time, and realized our genetic signatures did not match the crew it once carried. Kestrel chimed sharply in our helmets. "Warning. Unknown system interface detected. The vessel is probing our suit biosignatures." "Block it," I ordered. "I am attempting to, but its interface protocols exceed known technology. It is analyzing your DNA, Commander." "What's it looking for?" Marin whispered. The answer came from beneath our feet. A faint tapping, not random, a rhythm. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause, 3 beats again. A pattern, intentional. Marin's eyes widened. "Elias, that's distress code, a basic pattern used in early emergency training. Whoever, whatever, is below. It's trying to communicate." I stared down at the sealed hatch as the tapping repeated, weak and uneven. 3, 2, 3. A plea older than any technology. Then the voice rose again, struggling through damaged vocal anatomy. "Open! Please!" Marin turned to me. "We have to help it." Raffi shook his head violently. "We open that hatch, we die. Whatever they became. Humans weren't meant to survive the future they fled." The tapping continued. 3, 2, 3. A signal of desperation. And beneath it, barely audible, something else stirred. A second breath. There was more than one being under the floor. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound came from beneath the chamber floor. That rhythmic tapping, weakening, faltering, then struggling back into its 3-2-3 pattern. But the second breath, the newer one, disturbed me more. It wasn't gasping like the first voice. It was steady, controlled, patient. Marin leaned toward the hatch, her visor centimeters above the polished surface. "Elias, there are at least 2 individuals down there." "Individuals?" Raffi snapped. "Or things that used to be individuals." She didn't look away. "If future humans buried themselves here, they must have had a reason. We need to understand what happened to them. What happened? Raffi hissed. Listen to it, Maren. Those aren't human lungs, or human throats, or... Another tapping sound cut him off, but not from below this time, from above. The three of us whipped our heads upward. The domed ceiling had gone dark except for a narrow ring of pale light forming around the edges. Within that circle, faint shapes pressed against the translucent material. Silhouettes, distorted, too thin, too long. They moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm, like limbs drifting underwater. Then they vanished. Maren exhaled shakily. Elias, something else is inside the ship. Kestrel confirmed it at once. Commander, tracing movement in the upper sections. Multiple mass signatures. Very low thermal output. Locomotion inconsistent with human gait. Raffi's voice jumped an octave. You said this place was dormant. A correction, Kestrel replied. It was dormant. I motioned for the team to stand back from the hatch. Everyone keep eyes on every surface. No blind spots. But even as I said it, the floor beneath us shuddered lightly. A tremor of anticipation, not decay. The hatch seams began to glow, thin lines of soft white radiance tracing the outline of the compartment beneath. Maren gasped. It's responding to us. It knows we're here. It thinks we're supposed to be here, Raffi said, backing away. We share enough DNA to confuse it, remember. If this is a future human vessel, it might be trying to welcome us. And the ones down there? I asked quietly. Maren swallowed. They might be trying to welcome their ancestors. Before I could respond, the chamber lights shifted again, but not to blue or red this time, to green. Kestrel spoke the moment it happened. Commander, I have identified the color cycles. Blue indicates dormancy, red indicates intrusion, green is... The AI hesitated. Green is what? I demanded. Authorization, Kestrel said. The hatch split open, not explosively, no hiss of pressure, no mechanical grind. The seams simply widened soundlessly, petals of living metal folding outward like the opening of a flower. Cold, stale air rose from the compartment, brushing across our suits with a faint humidity that did not belong on Mars. A shape lay within. The first being. I wish I could call it a person. But as the figure stirred, its limbs curled beneath it like a creature waking from a tomb. I realized how wrong that word felt. The body was humanoid, in the loosest sense. The proportions were elongated, the bones beneath the pale skin too visible, as if every ounce of fat and muscle had been consumed. The ribcage protruded like a cage of sharpened arcs. Long fingers twitched weakly, each tipped not with nails, but with thin keratin blades, translucent and curved. The head lifted slowly. The face... No. The face gave me nightmares for months afterward. The jaw was narrow, stretched, as though restructured for an environment with thinner air. The cheekbones were high, the eyes slightly enlarged, the irises a milky grey with fractal patterns spiraling inward. A mouth opened, revealing not rows of teeth, but smooth plates, ridged and interlocking like adaptive breathing structures. And when it spoke, The voice was dry, trembling, closer to wind than words. Maren stepped forward despite herself. Elias, it recognizes us. But I noticed something else, something far more alarming. The being wasn't alone. Behind it, deeper within the compartment's shadows, another pair of eyes reflected our lights, smaller, sharper, watching, not struggling like the first, observing. I gripped Maren's arm. Step back, now. She hesitated, transfixed by the creature's gaze. It's trying to communicate. It's trying to survive, I corrected quietly. Look at its body. It's dying. It needs us. Raffi whispered sharply. Needs us how? The creature answered without meaning to. Its skeletal fingers reached upward toward the opening, shaking violently. Not in aggression, in desperation. It touched the edge of the hatch, its skin pressing against the living metal. Where it made contact, its tissue darkened. Fast, like ice spreading through a vein. The creature recoiled, shrieking, no sound, just a tremor through the air, and collapsed back into the compartment. Maren gasped. The ship is rejecting it. No, I said softly. The ship's environment isn't compatible with what it became. Raffi stared at the trembling figure. If that's a future human, whatever happened in 2183 changed them beyond recognition. Kestrel chimed in. Commander, the second mass signature is moving closer to the opening. The eyes in the darkness shifted. Not weak, not dying, not desperate. Predatory. The first entity, the dying one, reached toward us again, this time with more strain, more urgency. Its voice cracked through its distorted anatomy. Help, please, not like him. Maren froze. Him, she whispered. The second creature lunged. Not fully, not yet, but enough to reveal its face. It was what the first one would become if it survived, its transformation. The features were sharper, the limbs longer, the teeth replaced entirely by interlocking plates designed not for speech, but for feeding. Its eyes were pitch black, reflecting nothing. Its skin stretched taut over a network of visible vessels pulsing with faint bioluminescence. And unlike the first, it didn't gasp for air. It breathed smoothly, effortlessly, made for a world we could not imagine. It stared at us, not with recognition, but with hunger. Maren stumbled backward. Elias! I raised my cutter tool, though I knew it was useless. Kestrel's voice cut in sharply. Commander, movement above. Multiple signatures converging. Estimated contact in 30 seconds. Raffi screamed. There are more? Yes, there were more. The entire ship was waking, and the future was coming for us. The chamber became a pressure cooker of motion. The dying one lay crumpled at the edge of the hatch, its breaths shallow and erratic, each exhale sounding like air forced through split membranes. The second creature, the one built for some future atmosphere, hovered just within the compartment's shadow line, as if the light from our suits irritated it. Above, the mass signatures Kestrel had detected drew closer, their movements tracing lazy arcs through the upper decks, circling, converging. We were not alone with a single aberration. We were inside a nest. Kestrel, I said, forcing my voice steady. I need a route out, any route. Hidden emergency port, venting corridor, structural weakness, anything. A few seconds of silence then. Negative, Commander. All known structural seams have sealed. However, internal pathways ahead remain open. A trap, Raffi muttered. Or a test, Maren said. The dying future human strained again to lift its head. Its eyes, those pale, spiraling irises, fixed on me with a focus that cut through every instinct to run. With a trembling hand, it gestured weakly toward the dark corridor opposite the one we came through. Bridge, it rasped. Logs. Show. You. Raffi shook his head. Elias, we cannot follow the directions of something that looks like that. But I understood the logic buried inside the horror. If this ship was from Earth's future, its bridge would hold records. Navigation charts, mission directives, transmissions, answers. And answers in a place like this were worth more than air. I stepped away from the hatch. We move. Now. Keep formation tight. Helmets recording continuous footage. Kestrel, route us to the bridge. The AI responded immediately. Confirmed, Commander. Forward corridor, 20 meters, then ascending ramp. I will guide you. Maren hesitated, glancing back down at the compartment. We cannot just leave it here. The dying one coughed, a wet, fragile sound. Go, it whispered, before he calls. Others. He. My gaze flicked back toward the second creature in the shadows. It had not moved closer, but its eyes had not left us. It watched with a stillness that felt more like calculation than curiosity. I turned away. We followed Kestrel's directions through the opposite corridor. As we passed beneath the archway, the walls shifted in color from green to a muted silver, soft light gliding across the surfaces like liquid. Our footsteps echoed strangely, each step returning to us an instant too late, as though the sound itself were slowed. Rafi's voice carried a tremor. The internal gravity is shifting. He was right. There was a faint change in weight with each meter we advanced, as if the ship were adjusting to our mass, recalibrating. I felt it in my knees, a pull that was not quite Martian, not quite Earth normal, something in between, some compromise. "Commander," Kestrel said softly, "the vessel is trying to create a comfortable field for you." "That is not comforting," I replied. We emerged into a smaller chamber, this one filled with suspended lattice structures like frozen cobwebs carved from glass. Tiny motes drifted between the strands, glowing briefly when our lights struck them. "Careful," Marin murmured. "These look like data arrays. Each node might be a storage cluster." Rafi frowned. "Where are the screens? Consoles? Anything familiar?" "Future tech may not use physical interfaces," Marin said. "They might have transitioned to direct neural uplink for all systems." "Meaning their computers talk straight to their brains," he muttered. "Meaning they internalize the ship," she corrected. Kestrel guided us through the floating lattice without touching anything. One wrong bump might activate systems we did not understand. At the far end of the chamber, an aperture irised open, revealing a narrow ramp spiraling upward. "Bridge above," Kestrel confirmed. As we ascended, I felt something press faintly against my thoughts, a presence like a memory I did not own, probing the edges of my mind for recognition. It left a residual ache behind my eyes. "Kestrel," I said through clenched teeth, "are you detecting cognitive interference?" "Yes, Commander. Low-level psionic field." "Psionic?" Rafi scoffed. "That is not a real—" "I do not have a better human word," Kestrel replied. "The ship's systems are broadcasting non-electromagnetic information patterns. Your nervous systems are intercepting them." "Can you block it?" I asked. "No," the AI admitted, "but I can monitor its progression and warn you if it attempts integration." Integration. The word tasted like a threat. At the top of the ramp, we entered the bridge. It was not a room of chairs and consoles overlooking a panoramic view. No windows, no visible controls. Instead, the space was dominated by a central sphere suspended in mid-air, crisscrossed by delicate bands of metal and tissue. The sphere pulsed faintly with light, a heartbeat in slow motion. Around it, 6 empty cradles formed a ring, seats like the one we had seen earlier, each designed for a body to sink into and connect. Marin's voice was hushed. "This is it, the command nexus." I took a step closer to the sphere. Within its translucent surface, shapes moved, lines of light, swirling nodes, and intermittently, flashes of imagery too fast to make sense of. Cityscapes drowned in ash-grey haze, oceans boiling, storm systems wrapped around the planet like strangling hands. Kestrel's tone flattened, as if switching to a more analytical mode to cope. "Commander, the Nexus contains compressed visual memory. With your permission, I can attempt to decode and stream it to your suits." "Do it," I said. "Warning," Kestrel replied. "There is a high probability that exposure will cause psychological distress." "Do it anyway," I repeated. A beat of silence. Understood. The world shifted. It didn't unfold as a neat sequence of video. Instead, images crashed into one another like fragments of a broken mirror. Earth, viewed from orbit, its blue and green tones muted beneath a veil of faint grey. Then closer. megacities sprawling with tightly sealed structures, their open spaces replaced by enclosed habitats. Towers bristled with sensor arrays scanning a sky that glowed with auroral streaks even near the equator. Maren gasped as the images flickered through her visor. What happened to the atmosphere? Another flash. Hospitals filled with unmoving bodies, suspended in transparent chambers. Medical displays showed genetic codes adorned with red warning markers. Environmental hazard levels off every chart. A voice, calm, official, threaded through the chaos. Phase 1 adaptation unsuccessful. Native biosphere destabilizing. Atmospheric composition drifting beyond baseline tolerance ranges. Rafi's breathing quickened. They broke Earth. They actually broke it. More images. Farms sealed under geodesic domes. Workers in armored suits tending to crops that no longer resembled anything we would call plants, their leaves black and luminous, their roots coiled like muscle. Children with respirators built directly into their chests, the line between biology and machinery erased, and overlaying it all, a constant feed of numbers. Radiation levels, airborne toxin counts, mutagen markers, every metric trending upward. The voice resumed. Phase 2. Genetic specialization. Survival of the species prioritized over genetic fidelity. All authorized citizens to undergo adaptive sequencing by year 2170. Non-compliant populations will be relocated to controlled zones. The images sharpened, focusing now on a single launch complex. A massive vessel, the same design as the one we now stood in, sat on a platform ringed with containment fields. Around it, crowds of altered humans watched in silence, their faces masked, their eyes glowing faintly. Mission designation, Sovereign Dawn. Objective, temporal evacuation. Deliver adapted genetic line to pre-collapse era safe zone. Establish continuity outside hostile temporal window. Temporal evacuation. They were not just leaving Earth. They were leaving time. Maren whispered, "They tried to send themselves back. To us." Rafi's voice broke. "And instead of reaching Earth's past, they crashed into Mars's crust." "No," I said slowly as the final images settled into place. "Not crashed. Buried." The sphere showed one last sequence. The ship approaching Mars, its temporal drives flickering with unstable light. Alarms blared, systems failed. A decision point appeared. Hold course for Earth, risk tearing the vessel apart, or divert. The captain's voice came through, distorted by centuries and compression artifacts. Divert to contingency coordinate. Mars, subsurface, hide. If recovered by ancestral line, warning must be delivered. They must not walk our path. The last image lingered. Earth. Color drained. Clouds twisted into unnatural spirals. A faint, shimmering band encircling the planet like a bruise. The connection faded, leaving us back on the bridge, breathless, hearts pounding. Maren spoke first, voice raw. They destroyed their own world trying to survive what was coming. And they used this ship to escape backwards in time. To us. Rafi's reply was barely above a whisper. And something followed them. As if to confirm his words, Kestrel's voice returned, sharp and urgent. "Commander, the upper signatures are descending, and the second entity in the compartment below has left its position." "Where is it now?" I asked. There was a pause. "Approaching the bridge from the corridor behind you," Kestrel said. I turned. The doorway we had entered through was no longer empty. Something stood there, and in its hand, it held a shard of the ship's own living metal, shaped into a blade. It stood there motionless, framed perfectly within the curved doorway, as if the ship itself had shaped the entrance around its elongated silhouette. The shard of living metal in its hand pulsed with faint internal light, not reflected, but generated, like tissue laced with bioluminescent veins. The creature's eyes locked onto mine, black and fathomless. their surface absorbing the glow from our suits instead of reflecting it. "Back," I whispered to the others. "Slowly." Raffi had already taken several steps, stumbling against the edge of a cradle. His breathing rasped through the comms. "Elias, it's hunting us." "Not hunting," Maren said quietly, assessing. The creature tilted its head slightly, as if listening to her words through vibrations instead of sound. Then it stepped forward. One step. Silent. Effortless. I raised my cutter tool between us. It was a pathetic gesture. We all knew the device wasn't designed for combat, but instinct pushed training aside. "Maren! Raffi! Behind me! Now!" The creature moved again, faster this time. With each step, the living metal shard reshaped subtly between its fingers, flowing like liquid, yet retaining a lethal edge. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was an extension of its biology, something grown, not manufactured. Kestrel broke the silence. "Commander, the creature's neural patterns indicate heightened focus. It has identified you as the target." "The target?" Raffi yelped. "What does that even mean?" "It recognizes Elias's genetic markers most closely," Maren whispered, realization sinking in. "It sees him as compatible." Compatible. A cold understanding curled in my gut. This ship was designed to connect biologically with its pilots. Seats like cradles, the neural sphere, the adaptable environment, and the future humans who created it had altered themselves to survive their dying world. We resembled them, but incompletely. The creature stepped closer. Its long, tapered fingers flexed once, the blade elongated with the motion. "Elias," Maren breathed. "It's trying to bring you into the cradle. It thinks you're meant to interface with the ship." "No chance," I muttered. But the creature lunged, not clumsily, not wildly. It moved like a shadow cutting through water. One moment it stood across the room. The next, it was within reach, the blade arcing toward my chest. I barely deflected it with the cutter tool, the clash sending a jolt through both devices. No metallic clang, just a soft, horrible vibration, like bone striking bone. I staggered back, knees buckling. Maren grabbed my arm and dragged me aside as the creature's second strike sliced into the cradle behind us, carving through the seamless material as if through damp clay. Raffi shouted, "Kestrel, is there any way out of this room?" "One potential route," the AI said, "but you will not like it." "Tell us," I snapped, parrying another slash that skimmed my visor and left a faint glowing smear. Not damage, but residue. "The captain's access lift beneath the central sphere leads to an auxiliary deck, but it appears sealed." "Can we open it?" Maren asked. "Yes," Kestrel replied, "if Commander Wren interfaces with the sphere directly." "No," Raffi said instantly. "Absolutely not." "It's the only path," Kestrel said calmly. The creature lunged again. This time it feinted, striking low instead of high. The blade sliced through the floor plating, sending a ripple through the room as the ship's biometal healed around the wound like living tissue knitting itself closed. "Kestrel," I shouted, dodging to avoid another strike. "You said interface. Define that." "The sphere must read your neural signature. A surface touch may be sufficient." "May?" Raffi cried. The creature pivoted suddenly, shifting its weight in a disturbingly fluid motion. It wasn't attacking randomly. It was herding me toward the sphere. I understood now. It didn't want to kill us. It wanted to complete its mission. Bring the ancestral line, us, into the ship's central intelligence. Connect us. Assimilate our minds into its system the way the future crew had done. "No," I whispered under my breath as I stumbled backward. "I'm not becoming part of this machine." But the creature lunged again, driving me closer to the sphere suspended in the center of the room. Maren leapt between us, slamming her shoulder into the creature. It struck her across the chest with its free hand. Not even a lethal hit, just a backhand. yet she flew several meters, crashing into a cradle with a violent impact that made my stomach drop. "Maren!" I ran to her as she gasped, trying to breathe through the jolt. Her visor was uncracked, but she clutched her ribs. "I'm okay," she managed. "Just do it. Touch the sphere. Open the lift." I hesitated a split second too long. The creature's blade slashed downward toward my helmet and stopped inches from my face, frozen, not by fear, by command. A low tone resonated through the bridge, deep, rhythmic, unmistakable. A voice, not speech, but authority. A command code from elsewhere in the ship. Multiple signatures flooded Kestrel's sensors. They were coming. Not one creature, dozens. The tone echoed again, vibrating through the chamber with a pressure that pressed against my skull. The creature in front of me stepped back, lowering its weapon, head bowing slightly toward the sound. Raffi whispered, "It's submitting to something bigger." Kestrel's voice shifted to urgency. "Commander, now, touch the sphere. The lift will open. If you do not, these creatures will converge on your position." I pressed my hand to the sphere. Heat surged into my glove. Not burning, but invasive, like static flooding my nerves. Light pulsed inside the sphere, racing through its internal veins. The floor beneath us trembled. Panels around the sphere peeled open silently, revealing a lowered platform, the captain's access lift. But at the same moment, a new sound drifted into the bridge. A slow, deliberate tapping. Not from the creature, not from the sphere, from the corridor behind the creature. 3 beats. Pause. 2 beats. Pause. 3 beats. The dying one from below. It was coming toward us, crawling, dragging itself, trying to warn us, trying to reach us before the others did. Then its voice rasped through the corridor, barely audible, shaking with urgency and fear. "Not ship, not crew." It coughed, a horrible sound of tearing membranes. "They're not us." The shadows behind the creature thickened, shapes emerging. Too many. I turned to Maren and Raffi. "Down the lift, now." The bridge lights dimmed as the first of the approaching figures stepped into view. And for the first time, we realized the truth. Whatever had evolved on Earth's future, whatever had built this ship, whatever had tried to escape the world they ruined, the beings inside this vessel were not them. They were something else, something that had taken the ship, something that had followed it through time. The lift dropped so quickly, it nearly tore the breath from my lungs. The platform wasn't mechanical, no cables, no gears. It moved like a pulse traveling through a vein, lowering us into the ship's interior with quiet, terrifying precision. Above us, shapes crowded the bridge, their silhouettes bending over the edge as the opening sealed with living metal. Maren clutched her ribs, breathing hard. "Elias, those things, they weren't future humans." "No," I said quietly. "They weren't." Raffi leaned against the railing, eyes wide. "Then what the hell were they? Parasites, mutations, some engineered faction that survived Earth's collapse?" Before I could answer, Kestrel interjected with a tone I'd never heard from her before. Tight, clipped, almost cautious. "Commander, I am detecting 2 distinct biosignature lineages aboard this vessel. One matches the altered future human genome. The other does not." We waited. Raffi swallowed. "Define does not." "The second lineage is older," Kestrel replied. "Far older. Pre-human in origin." Maren's eyes snapped to me. "Elias, this wasn't just an evacuation ship. It was carrying something else." Raffi's voice cracked. "Something they found." The lift slowed, then drifted to a stop inside a cavernous chamber. Unlike the corridors above, this space looked raw, as though the ship had grown around it organically long after initial construction. The air was thicker here, humid, carrying a faint vibration like a distant hum. Light rippled across the walls. And then we saw them. Pods, hundreds of them. Tall, slender structures like translucent cocoons, each one sealed around a humanoid figure suspended in dark fluid. Their silhouettes were unmistakably human, or once human. Some elongated like the altered future crew, some nearer to our own proportions. But others were wrong. One pod contained a body so skeletal, the limbs resembled strands of webbed cartilage. Another held a shape bent backward, vertebrae arched like an insect's exoskeleton. Some had no visible eyes, only smooth domed foreheads. Others bore spirals of luminous patterns down their throats like bioluminescent tattoos. Raffi gagged. Jesus, they were experimenting on themselves. No, Maren murmured. They were being changed. Look. At the far end of the chamber, a pod split open, not recently, but long ago. The fluid inside had dried to a faint white crust, leaving behind a hollow indentation shaped vaguely like a human torso. But the edges of the pod were torn, not opened. Something clawed its way out. Kestrel's voice was soft. These pods predate the Sovereign Dawn's launch. Predate? I echoed. By how much? Unknown, but the material degradation suggests several thousand years. Maren's eyes widened. The future humans found these. They didn't make the pods. They discovered them. Raffi backed away from a cracked pod. Meaning those things upstairs aren't human evolution. I stared at the ruined pods, the torn edges, the claw marks. They're invaders. Not from space, not from Mars, not from our future, from someone else's past. Maren stepped closer to a cluster of pods still holding viable forms. The bodies inside had partially fused with the fluid, their skin mottled with patches of metallic luster. Some pods bore signs of forced entry, holes melted outward, as if something had dissolved its way free. Kestrel processed silently, then spoke again. Commander, I have accessed low-level memory patterns from the pod network. These organisms are not native to Earth or Mars. Then where? I asked. Their genome is not catalogued in any known terrestrial or exoplanetary database, but their structure indicates adaptation to high radiation environments, and their neural architecture suggests rudimentary psionic communication. Maren turned toward the humming walls. They communicate like the ship, like the sphere. Raffi's voice dropped to a whisper. They control the vessel. The implication hit me like a blow. The future humans had built a ship to escape a collapsing Earth, or to escape time itself. But whatever they found before launch, these pods, these organisms, had taken the vessel from the inside. These creatures were not refugees. They were hijackers. And the altered future humans we'd seen weren't the evolved future of Earth survivors. They were victims, the taken. Maren knelt beside a pod with a nearly human figure. A middle-aged woman, features gaunt but unmistakably human, floated inside. She's one of the Sovereign Dawn crew, Maren whispered. But look, the fluid is interacting with her skin, changing her, and the process froze midway. The ship must have shut down during the temporal jump, Raffi said. Interrupted the transformation. Not transformation, I said quietly. Assimilation. Kestrel pinged us again. Commander, more signatures are descending from the upper sections. The creatures have split into two groups. One is searching the bridge. The other is tracking your movement. We have to move, I said. But the chamber wasn't done with us. A faint tapping echoed from deeper within. Not the 3-2-3 pattern. Something slower, larger. Each impact reverberated through the floor like a giant heartbeat. Maren froze. Elias, that's coming from the central cluster. The central cluster stood at the far end of the room. 20 pods arranged in a perfect circle, all connected by a lattice of living cables, feeding into a single, massive structure at their center. It was not a pod. It was a cocoon. Unlike the others, this cocoon was opaque. its surface covered in thick layers of hardened biometal and bone-like ridges. Faint veins of luminescent fluid pulsed. Beneath the outer shell, forming patterns that looked disturbingly deliberate. Raffi whispered, "Is that a leader?" Kestrel answered before any of us could. The cocoon contains a fully developed organism, larger than the others, neural mass 12 times greater. Psionic output so strong it is interfering with my sensors. "That's what's controlling the ship," Maren said. "And that's what's controlling them," I added. The tapping came again. Slow, heavy, deliberate. This time, the cocoon shifted. Just a few millimeters. But enough. Enough to show it was aware. Enough to show it was waking. Then the chamber lights flickered. Once, twice, and the pod lattice surrounding the cocoon glowed bright red. Kestrel's voice sharpened. "Commander, the pod network is transmitting a priority signal throughout the ship." "What kind of signal?" I demanded. "Containment breach." Raffi's eyes widened. "We triggered it." "No," Maren whispered. "It triggered itself." Something scraped against the inside of the cocoon. A long, slow drag. A claw. Kestrel's final words before Block 7 ended chilled the blood in my veins. "Commander, the creature inside the cocoon recognizes your DNA." I stared at the pulsing shell. "Recognizes it how?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "As kin." The word kin echoed through my helmet speakers with a coldness that made my stomach twist. In any other context, it would have sounded familiar, almost comforting. But down here, surrounded by rows of pods containing half-transformed humans and fully formed nightmares, it felt like a death sentence. Raffi took a step back, nearly tripping over a discarded pod brace. No, that's impossible. Elias isn't connected to this. He's from our time, our genome." Maren shook her head, eyes fixed on the pulsating cocoon. "Not our genome, future humans. Remember what the logs showed. They genetically altered themselves. They changed their DNA to survive the collapse. And these things changed it further," I said quietly. Kestrel's voice sharpened. "Commander Wren's mitochondrial markers exhibit rare sequences that overlap with the altered genome inside the cocoon." Raffi stared at me like he'd never seen me before. "Elias? How?" I didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. Maren stepped between us. "Raffi, think. Temporal evacuation means their timeline loops backward. If some of them made it further into the past than recorded, their descendants would be here, now. Elias could carry a dormant genetic fragment from a lineage erased in our historical records." "You're saying Elias is descended from those people?" Raffi demanded. "I'm saying," she replied softly, "he might be descended from the ones who didn't survive." The cocoon pulsed harder now, as if stirred by the very act of our conversation. A vein of light crawled across its hardened surface, then split into branches that resembled neural dendrites. The organism inside was responding to my proximity, not hunting me, summoning me. Kestrel's voice cut back in. "Commander, the pod network is synchronizing with your suit's biometric output. It is attempting to open the cocoon." Raffi panicked. "We have to get out of here. Move now, before that thing hatches." But the chamber's exit sealed behind us, living metal flowing across the archway, like a wound closing shut. Maren sucked in a breath. "It's locking us in. It doesn't want us to run." "No," I said. "It wants something from me." The tapping inside the cocoon grew louder, faster, urgent, a rhythm that didn't follow the earlier distress signal. This one matched a heartbeat. My heartbeat. The pod lattice surrounding the cocoon vibrated, their suspended forms trembling as the fluid inside rippled in sync with the pulsing in the center. The creatures inside strained against their restraints, some weakly, others with frantic jerks. They sensed their master waking. "Commander," Kestrel said with a rare tremor in her synthetic tone, I have completed comparative analyses. The cocoon organism is not entirely alien. What is it? Marin whispered. Hybrid, Kestrel replied. Part future human, part organism from the ancient pods. It possesses the neurological structure of the invaders, combined with the genetic flexibility of the adapted humans. Rafi's voice cracked. A perfect fusion. It is a singular entity, Kestrel continued. A leader-caste organism designed to assume control of the vessel, and eventually a population. Marin's eyes narrowed. A commander. No, Kestrel corrected. A progenitor. The chamber lights dimmed, then blazed with violent intensity as the cocoon's exterior cracked, a thin line splitting down its length. A hiss of vapor escaped, carrying a scent none of us should have smelled through sealed helmets. Warm, organic, almost familiar. Marin whispered, Elias. What if this thing is what the future humans were trying to create? A being capable of surviving anything? Radiation, toxins, starvation, environmental collapse. And intelligence, Rafi added. Control, a mind built to lead. Or conquer, I said. The crack widened. A sliver of pale flesh glistened inside. Kestrel spoke again, urgent now. Commander Wren, this entity carries a dominant gene sequence that matches a dormant sequence in you. If it reaches you, it may attempt integration. Integration? Rafi shouted. Into what? The ship, Kestrel said. And into itself. My pulse hammered against my ribs. It wanted me, not to kill me, to absorb me, to complete itself. Elias, Marin whispered, stepping close. We're not letting that happen. But the chamber floor shifted beneath us, as if the entire ship shuddered with anticipation. The pods around the cocoon split open one by one, their fluids spilling out like spilled blood glowing under ultraviolet light. The figures inside dropped to the floor, some collapsing, others dragging themselves toward the center. All of them facing the cocoon. All of them waiting. Rafi screamed, We have to go. Kestrel, find another exit. One option, Kestrel replied, but it is not safe. Safer than this, he yelled. The structural membrane beneath the pod cluster leads to the ship's temporal drive architecture, Kestrel said. A sublevel not designed for human entry. Marin grabbed my arm. We'll die if we stay here. And then, the cocoon split open. The sound was indescribable, like softened bone cracking underwater. A pale hand, too long, too delicate, too familiar, curled around the edge of the opening. Then a second hand. Slowly, deliberately, the being inside pulled itself forward, revealing a face. My breath froze, because its face, though twisted, elongated, sharpened by some alien cruelty, bore the unmistakable remnants of human symmetry. A jawline like mine, cheekbones similar to my father's, eyes shaped like my grandmother's. Marin gasped. Elias, it looks like you. Not identical, not fully human, but kin. The creature's eyes opened, fully. They were silver, swirling with fractal patterns. And when it spoke, the voice was layered. Human undertones wrapped in alien resonance. Ancestor. My skin crawled. Rafi stumbled back. No. That thing is not related to him. It can't be. But the creature extended a hand toward me, its long fingers trembling. Join, it whispered. Marin lunged forward, shoving me back. Elias, move! Screams rose around us as the half-formed future humans dragged themselves closer to the progenitor, their bodies shifting grotesquely in response to its awakening. Commander, Kestrel warned again, the temporal architecture is destabilizing. If the progenitor completes integration with you, it may regain access to the temporal core. And then? I asked, even though I already knew. Then it will rewrite humanity. The progenitor stepped fully from the cocoon, its eyes locked onto mine, and it smiled. The progenitor's smile was a terrible thing. Not malicious, not triumphant, but inevitable. A smile of recognition, a smile of destiny, a smile that suggested our meeting was not coincidence but design, a loop closing across centuries. Its voice came again, layered and vibrating with alien harmonics. Join, complete, ascend. Maren shoved me behind her. Elias, don't look at it, don't respond. It's trying to sync with your neural rhythms. Raffi pulled at my arm frantically. We have to run, now. We go through the floor. I don't care what Kestrel said. We're dead if we stay. But the floor itself had begun to change. The biometal softened beneath our boots, shifting from solid to elastic, as if preparing to swallow us whole. Pod fluid spilled across the surface, shimmering like oil under dim light. The half-formed humanoids circled the progenitor now, moving in stuttering, reverent motions, their bodies twitching with incomplete impulses. The progenitor stepped toward me. Its movements were wrong, too smooth, too controlled, like a puppeteer pulling strings attached to flesh. Maren raised her cutter tool. Stay back. The progenitor didn't even flinch. With a flicker of psionic pressure, invisible but undeniable, it sent Maren sliding backward across the chamber floor. She hit the base of a pod, gasping, visor fogging from the impact's shock. Maren! I ran toward her, but Raffi grabbed me. Elias, the floor, look! The membrane beneath the central structure was peeling apart, opening like a wound. Light poured upward from below, not white or blue, but a swirling vortex of shimmering distortions. The temporal drive. It wasn't a machine. It was a pocket of twisting space-time, contained within a skeletal framework of biometal ribs. It pulsed with disorienting beauty, a spiraling core that bent light around itself in impossible directions. Every shift in its rhythm tore at my senses. Kestrel's voice sharpened. Commander Wren, do not approach the core. Exposure may destabilize your neural integrity. Raffi laughed hysterically. Neural integrity? What about survival integrity? Maren groaned, forcing herself upright. Elias, listen to me. That thing wants to use you to reopen the jump. If it gets into the core, if it anchors itself with your DNA, it could regain full power. And then? I asked, though horror already shaped the answer. Kestrel didn't soften the truth. Then it will travel to any point in time it chooses. The implications struck like a blow. If the progenitor escaped, if it went back further than intended, if it seeded itself anywhere in human history, it wouldn't rewrite our future. It would overwrite everything. The progenitor extended its hand again. Come, echo of blood. My heart pounded. Its genetic link to me was real. I felt it now, not in my mind, but in my bones, as if something, ancient and dormant, stirred within my marrow, a buried code awakening. Maren staggered to her feet. Elias, fight it. It's using your physiology to anchor itself. You have to resist. But resisting wasn't easy. A pressure built inside my skull, not pain, not exactly, but a pulling sensation, like invisible hooks sinking into my thoughts. Memories surfaced unbidden. My childhood home, my father's voice, the taste of the air on Earth before I ever left. All of it unraveling, examined, catalogued by something far older than me. Raffi screamed, Elias, move! The progenitor lunged, not toward Raffi, not toward Maren, toward me. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs failed. My body locked, frozen by some neurological command the progenitor imposed without effort. It reached out with elongated fingers brushing my helmet. A flash exploded behind my eyes. I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I stood in a wasteland. Blackened sky, boiling oceans, cities melted into glass, and walking across the ruins, thousands of progenitors, swarming like locusts, bending the remains of the world into something unrecognizable. A voice filled the vision. Our birth is your future. I gasped as the vision shattered. Maren grabbed me, dragging me backward. Elias, we are leaving! The progenitor screeched, not in pain, but in frustration, and its aura flared. The pod thralls lunged toward us, their movements jerky yet fast, driven by raw psionic command. Raffi slashed at one with his cutter, slicing through a tendril-like limb that sprouted from its ribcage. The thrall hit the ground, twitching violently, then tried to pull itself forward, using its jaw. Do not let them touch you, Kestrel warned, but the temporal core shifted again. The spiraling vortex widened, its pull increasing, sucking loose fluid and debris into its swirling surface. Pods cracked. Thralls howled. Even the progenitor staggered as the gravity around the core warped unpredictably. Elias, Maren yelled, pointing. The distortion, that gap in the ribs. We can drop through to the maintenance shaft below. Kestrel confirmed it instantly. Correct. The shaft leads to the ship's structural spine, a narrow but viable escape route. Raffi didn't wait. He jumped. The membrane tore beneath his boots, and he vanished in a streak of motion, tumbling into dim metallic depths below. Maren, go! I shouted. She hesitated for only a second, then leapt after him, disappearing through the fissure. The progenitor screamed, not with fear, but with fury, and lunged at me. Its fingers closed around my forearm. A jolt surged through my body. Not electricity, not pressure, recognition. You will not flee, it whispered. You are the bridge to all time. I gritted my teeth and spoke through the paralysis. Not today. With every ounce of strength I had left, I drove the cutter tool against the progenitor's arm. The blade barely pierced its skin, but the flash of resistance was enough. It recoiled, shrieking as the psionic hold shattered. I stumbled back. The temporal core flared, sucking the edges of the chamber's floor inward. I had seconds, maybe less. With one final breath, I ran and hurled myself into the fissure, as the progenitor dove after me, both of us falling, both of us descending, into the bones of a ship that was never meant to exist. The fall felt endless, not in distance. The shaft couldn't have been more than 20 or 30 meters deep. But in the way gravity buckled and twisted around us, tugging in directions that shouldn't exist. The walls of the maintenance shaft blurred as the ship's temporal systems bled into physical space. Light bent, shadows stretched. My stomach lurched as my perception lagged half a heartbeat behind my body. I hit the structural spine hard enough to knock the air from my lungs, suit systems flashing red for a few agonizing seconds before stabilizing. Metal, or what passed for metal in this monstrosity, groaned beneath me. Elias! Maren's voice crackled into my helmet, jittering like a damaged broadcast. Talk to me. I'm here, I managed, dragging myself upright. The structural spine stretched out in both directions, a narrow conduit flanked by pulsating cables and rib-like supports that curved overhead. Streams of distorted light drifted past, feeding toward the distant glow of the temporal core above us. Raffi crouched a few meters away, helmet turned upward. It's still open, he said. The fissure, the core's just above. A shape flickered in the gap overhead. The progenitor. It clung to the torn underside of the pod chamber like an insect, long limbs anchored to the edges. For a moment it just hung there, head tilting slowly as it tracked our movement. Then it dropped, landing on the spine with frightening grace. We staggered as the structure shuddered. Kestrel's voice came through in fragmented bursts. Commander, interference. Temporal flux at critical levels. Maren, Raffi, move, I shouted. We follow the spine. There has to be an access node. Raffi didn't need convincing. He bolted down the conduit, boots pounding against the flexing surface. Maren followed, one hand pressed against the wall for balance. I ran after them, acutely aware of the progenitor's footsteps behind us. Not loud, but heavy, each step sending a subtle vibration through the spine. "Commander," Kestrel said, stabilizing slightly. 100 meters ahead, there is a manual interface node. It is linked directly to the temporal core. "Can we shut it down?" I demanded. "Under normal conditions, yes," she replied. "But the core has exceeded safe thresholds. A full shutdown may cause a localized temporal rupture." "In plain language," Raffi panted, "what does that mean for us?" "An implosion of causality," Kestrel said. "This vessel and everything inside it would be removed from coherent time." Maren grimaced. "We'd be erased." "Not necessarily erased," Kestrel corrected. "Just unanchored." The progenitor's voice drifted toward us, echoing along the spine. "Running will not change what you are." Maren glanced back. "Elias, it's still focused on you." "I noticed," I muttered. We rounded a curve in the conduit, and there it was, the access node. It jutted from the spine like a growth, a cluster of tendrils merging into a central plate the size of a human chest. Faint lights pulsed beneath its surface, matching the rhythm of the core above. The moment I saw it, something in my bones recognized its purpose. "Kestrel," I said quietly, "what can I do with that?" "You can sever the temporal link," she said. "You can lock this vessel's timeline at the moment of its burial and collapse the internal psionic network." "Meaning?" Raffi asked. "Meaning," Kestrel said. "The progenitor and its thralls will be trapped in a frozen fragment of time, unable to move, unable to act, unable to escape." Maren looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. "What's the cost?" Kestrel hesitated. "Tell me," I insisted. "The node requires a primary genetic anchor," she said. "It must bind to a living organism whose genome overlaps both lineages, the future human and the invader." "Elias," Raffi whispered. "That's you." "Yes," Kestrel confirmed. "If you interface with the node, the system will use your genetic structure as the pattern for the lock. You will not survive the process." Maren shook her head violently. "No, we find another way." "There is no other way," Kestrel said. "The progenitor has already established partial control over the core. If it succeeds in completing integration, it will access the full jump capabilities." Raffi's voice cracked. "It'll go back, farther than before. Rewrite everything." "Not just Earth," Kestrel said. "Anywhere it chooses, anywhen." The progenitor stepped into view at the far end of the spine. No more words, no more invitations. Its patience was gone. It moved with terrifying speed now, the ship itself flexing to support its steps. Cables retracted, supports hardened under its weight. The vessel was obeying its rightful master. Maren grabbed my shoulders. "Elias, we can overload the node without you. Destroy it. Blow it out before it binds." Kestrel cut in sharply. "If the node is destroyed, the core will have no regulating anchor. The temporal rupture will spread beyond the ship. It could engulf a significant portion of Mars' crust." Maren's eyes widened. "The colony," Raffi cursed under his breath. "Of course, it's never just us." The progenitor closed the distance. 10 meters. 6. 4. Its eyes glowed with cold, silvery light. "Blood. Of my blood," it murmured. "You were made for this." I looked at Maren and Raffi, at my crew, at the only two people who might live long enough to carry the truth back home. "Get behind me," I said. Maren shook her head. "Elias." "Now," I said, and there was something in my tone that silenced them both. They stepped back. I turned to the progenitor, and for the first time, I stepped toward it. It hesitated, surprised. "Elias!" Maren shouted. "It wants me," I said quietly. "Fine, let it have me." I reached the node and tore off my glove. The air inside the spine was cold and damp, smelling faintly of metal and something older. I pressed my bare palm against the pulsing surface. It was like plunging my hand into liquid light. Pain lanced up my arm, not burning, but rewriting, as if every cell in my body were being examined and rearranged at once. My vision flickered. I saw the progenitor's face, and then my own reflected in its eyes, overlapping, merging. The node pulsed. Kestrel spoke rapidly, her voice now calm and clinical to mask the horror. Genetic anchor recognized, temporal lock sequence initializing. The progenitor lunged. Its hand closed over my shoulder, its fingers digging into suit and flesh. In that instant, our minds collided. Flashes of its existence tore through me. The ancient pods drifting through space, drawn to Earth by the radiation storms of a young sun. The future humans discovering them in the deep crust, thinking they'd found a miracle. The first fusions, the first losses. The decision to build the Sovereign Dawn not just as a lifeboat, but as a crucible. A new god for a dying species. I felt its hunger, its vision of a universe filled with copies of itself. And beneath all of that, deeper, quieter, a tiny, buried thread of something almost human. A remnant of the first mind it had ever consumed. The original captain, still screaming, even after centuries. I took that scream and held onto it. Elias! Marin's voice cut through the storm, raw and broken. Don't let it take you. I laughed. A short, ragged sound. I'm not going with it, I said. It's coming with me. I pushed, not physically, mentally, emotionally. Every memory I had, every rooted moment, every fragile human piece of myself I shoved into the connection. My father's voice, my mother's worn hands, the smell of rain on Martian regolith inside the greenhouse domes, Marin's quiet focus in the lab, Raffi's awful jokes over recycled coffee, humanity. I poured it all into the node, into the lock. Kestrel's voice rose over the roaring in my skull. Temporal lock 80%, warning, neural cohesion at critical breakdown in anchor host. My body felt distant, remote, but my voice still worked somehow. Kestrel, I said, route all mission data to the surface outpost. Logs, visuals, everything we've seen. It is already done, she said softly. Then one more thing, I whispered. Transmit this to every channel you can reach. Mark it as priority alpha. Use my authorization code. Marin was sobbing now, though she tried to hold it in. Elias, don't... Message as follows, I said, ignoring the way my vision darkened at the edges. Do not pursue temporal evacuation. Do not attempt large-scale genetic overhauls to survive environmental collapse. Fix the world. Do not abandon it. We found what waits on that path. The progenitor screamed as the lock completed, its voice tearing through my mind, not in triumph, but in rage. Kestrel spoke one last time. Temporal lock complete, initiating collapse. The world shattered, not with light, not with sound, with absence. Everything froze. The progenitor's grip on my shoulder solidified, its fingers locking in place. The cables around us stopped mid-sway. Droplets of pod fluid hung in the air like glass beads. The pulsing of the core above slowed, then halted. Time stopped. But not for me. Not yet. I felt myself stretching, thinning, drawn out across the moment like a line traced across a photograph. I saw the ship, entombed in Martian rock. I saw our excavation. I saw the future humans launching the Sovereign Dawn, their faces grim and hopeful. I saw Earth centuries from now, standing on a knife's edge, not yet doomed, not yet saved. And I realized something. The timeline wasn't fixed, not fully, not yet. What we had seen was a future, not the future. If my message reached them, if someone listened, the path could change, or not. I didn't know. I would never know. The last thing I felt was relief. Then I felt nothing at all. They recovered the transmission months later. Marin wrote the official report. Raffi tried to soften the edges, but the words were still jagged. They told the world about a derelict future human vessel beneath Mars, about an invasive organism, about a temporal engine that had been permanently neutralized. They did not mention the progenitor by name. They did not mention what it called me. But the warning went out. It echoed across agencies, committees, councils. Most dismissed it as an overreaction to an isolated anomaly, a curiosity, a future that could never happen. A few believed. They fought. They lost more votes than they won. Time would decide who was right. Years later, as the colonies expanded and Earth's climate models edged closer to those old dark projections, someone in a buried server farm on Mars brought up an encrypted file, labeled under my name. Commander Elias Wren, Sovereign Dawn Incident. They played my last message again. Fix the world. Do not abandon it. Outside, far beneath their feet, the entombed ship still sat in its scar of old excavation, frozen in a fragment of stolen time, its creatures locked in unending stillness. Sometimes, the seismographs recorded faint tremors from that region, tiny rhythmic vibrations, 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause, 3 beats. Most called it tectonic noise. Marin knew better. She never told anyone, because some warnings have to become myths before anyone takes them seriously, and some futures are best left buried under red dust and silence.